Okay, I think we're going to go ahead and get started. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. Yes, we are recording. We are recording this program, so everyone's aware. My name is Kristen Antleman, and I'm very happy to welcome you. I'm the University Librarian, UC Santa Barbara, and welcome to the opening event of our new exhibition in the library's Mountain Gallery on the first floor, Beyond the Wall, the Prison Art Resistance. The exhibition, which I hope you'll all have a chance to visit if you haven't already, features art donated by people who are currently imprisoned, who participated in the University of California's Underground Scholars Behind the Wall program. This event is co-sponsored with the Underground Scholars Santa Barbara program, which this program creates a pathway for incarcerated, formerly incarcerated, and system impacted individuals to enter higher education. Through this exhibit, we hope to raise awareness of their work at UCSB, and we welcome them here today. We are pleased to have the curators and current UCSB students, Ryan Flacco Rising, sorry, your name was split up on the screen here, apologize, Juan Gudiel, and Gilberto Murillo, here with us today to discuss their work on this exhibit, as well as the Underground Scholars program. Their discussion will be moderated by Professor Vicky Vertiz of the UCSB Writing Program. Following the discussion, we will have time for questions from the audience. Please submit your questions through the Q&A feature. I think you could also submit them through, Q&A feature we're using today, rather than chat, at the bottom of the Zoom screen. And as I mentioned, this event will be recorded. And thank you again for joining us. And I will now turn it over to Professor Vertiz.
Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for this opening of the currently virtual exhibit, but also live exhibit at our UCSB library. Thank you, Kristen and Alana, for all your help and support of the Underground Scholars. Thank you, Underground Scholars, for putting this together. And glad to be here. So just a little bit about myself. I'm a first generation college student. I'm a child of immigrants, identify as queer and working class. And my cousin, Oscar Shibata, is part of this exhibit. So when Juan asked if I had any art from him, I was really happy to comply and share. And I even have more things that he has made with me today. So I'm really happy to be here with all of you and just elevate the creativity and of our community members, of our family, of our relatives who are incarcerated. So really moved to be here. So let me introduce you to our wonderful curators. And in the chat, I put the link because I'm a professor and I want you to read along. Ryan Flacco Rising is a father of 4 and a formerly incarcerated student at UCSB, working towards his PhD in sociology. Rising was incarcerated for a total of 15 years as a juvenile and adult. He now works hard to show the community that incarcerated and formerly incarcerated individuals can change their lives with access to resources and community support. He cites, "We need to get in the business of building each other up instead of breaking each other down for profit." Thank you, Ryan. And Juan Gudiel is a 4th-year transfer student at UC Santa Barbara, working to get his BA in Chicanic Studies. Being the foster care system and formerly incarcerated, Juan is inspired to dismantle the school-to-prison pipeline. He hopes to work with at-promise youth who are impacted by multiple systems and be a credible messenger for these youth. Juan is the Gaucho Underground Scholars recruitment coordinator, who's worked tirelessly to help formerly incarcerated students transition into UCSB. Recently, he worked to develop the warm handoff system to ensure a calm and safe pathway into the university. He's also a research assistant investigating how resources impact students' college performance. Juan is a mentor to incoming freshmen through the Propel program and is part of the board of directors for a new honor society, Alpha Alpha Alpha. He's always on the go, as he's also the father of 2 while earning a 3.9 GPA. In the future, he plans to earn his PhD in order to work towards bridging the gap of systemic impacted youth in higher education. And lastly, we have Gilberto Anthony Murillo, a 4th-year undergraduate at UCSB studying sociology and poli-sci. He grew up in Norwalk, California, Southeast LA, historically impacted by over-policing, violence, and gang rivalries. At 19, he was racially framed for racially profiled for gun possession by a police officer and charged with homicide with a gang enhancement, which was later reduced to stolen property. These experiences motivate Gilberto to pursue activism in higher education and abolish mass incarceration through emancipatory policies. Gilberto has organized with local communities and advocated in the statewide Underground Scholars Initiative. He's also worked at the UCSB USI policy advocacy on the Raising Murillo Act to support formerly incarcerated students with an efficient expungement once a four-year institution degree has been completed. He's been actively involved with the Cops Off Campus movement, a cross-campus initiative by students and faculty. Additionally, he's an active USI liaison in the Environmental Justice Alliance and Student Affairs Student Council, responsible to foster and maintain meaningful relationships with the administration, faculties, campus organizations, and university board to create effective curriculums to enhance FI student learning and achievement. Gilberto is a Ronald McNair Scholar and conducted an interdisciplinary research project titled From California Prison to Policy Work, How Incarceration Has Led to Activism, which demonstrates that formerly incarcerated activists utilize their experience and political consciousness to create emancipatory policies that challenge the root cause of carceral logic. Welcome, everyone. And now Juan is going to tell us about who and what the Underground Scholars are. And Ryan's going to tell us about how this exhibition came to be, why it's important. Welcome, Juan and Ryan.
How's it going? Thank you. Thank you everyone for showing up. As mentioned above, we are the Gaucho Underground Scholars here at UC Santa Barbara. We are an organization that basically just provides just critical guidance and support to formerly incarcerated and system impacted individuals. Here at UCSB and in the community colleges and high school and other institutions, we work with like as mentioned above, we work with college students inside and outside of the prison system, building a pathway that makes possible for a safe transition and an easier transition for these individuals to acclimate to the university. And we do this through the three main pillars of recruitment, retention, and advocacy. And basically through these three pillars, we're creating this prison to school pipeline. So thank you, and we'll pass it on to my co-curator, Flacco.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. Thank you, everyone that's been invested in creating this and bringing this exhibition to life. So how the idea for this exhibition came about and why is this art important to display? So it was all of us. We've come together on a weekly basis, and we just always creatively think of ways to shine the light on the mass incarceration and the inhumane conditions that incarcerated individuals and also our formerly incarcerated individuals are experiencing even after they get out of the prison industrial complex. And one thing that came to mind was we have a whole entire population of people that are community members that are incarcerated that are just casted away. And we thought, man, it would be awesome to reach out to our friends and our family members who are inside and start to collect art from them as a way to be involved with them and their transition from higher education on the inside out here to the university. And so I've been incarcerated predominantly my whole life. I went through the school to prison pipeline. I never imagined myself here at UCSB. And one thing that we always tell each other when we're about to leave prison is, hey, homie, I'll write you. And, and I told my homie, Luis, that, hey, homie, I'm going to write you when I get out. And he said, yeah, right, Flacco. You know how many times I've heard that? And I go, hey, I promise, homie, I'm going to write you. Well, I wrote him. And I told him, hey, homie, I told you I was going to write you. And he was like, hey, what's up, Flacco? What you doing? And I sent him, literature about the Underground Scholars and the work we're doing. And he was just so amazed. And I told him, hey, homie, would you be willing to donate an art piece to us, you know, and we'll put it in an art exhibit. I'm going to try to create this art exhibit with all the underground scholars right here. We're all trying to get as much art as we can from all of our incarcerated community members. And he was like, of course. And he started sending all this art to us. And then the next thing you know, the next homie, Francisco, he started sending all this art to us too. Like, Flacco, we're so proud of you. And so these individuals who are used to us coming home and just, you know, carrying on with our lives or returning back to prison to visit them, right? Due to the recidivism factories that exist in our communities. You know, the one thing that Chaparro told me, Luis told me before I left was, hey, Flacco, I don't care if you don't write me, just don't come back and visit me. And so I've been working really hard to just not ever experience that recidivism factory ever again. And we've been working hard, the underground scholars, and creating pathways, you know, to higher education and pathways to sustainable, you know, outcomes after incarceration. And hands down, we wouldn't have been able to do this without Gilbert Murillo's brother, Danny Murillo. You know, so we definitely want to give a shout out to the founders at the beginning stages of Underground Scholars, because we wouldn't be here today without Danny Murillo, Steven Sitzfra, and the system impacted folks that were in the beginning stages of the Berkeley Underground Scholars program. And so now we're here. And so this is what this came to life. And so we have multiple artists, and it's all about shining light on them. These are individuals who are our community members too. And even though we can't, you know, see them next to us as neighbors, they are our neighbors. And so, you know, one thing that I always emphasize is, who do we want to come home and be our neighbor? And this art is important to really help these individuals heal. And we'll get into that today through these questions and through, you know, through our own personal experiences. Is, who do we want to come home and be our neighbor? Do we want a homicidal, drug addicted individual dealing with serious mental illness issues that were created by a dehumanizing prison industrial complex? Or do we want an artistic, social justice driven, educated individual to come home and be our neighbors? Because I'm telling you right now, 90% of these individuals that are in the prison industrial complex across this state of California are going to come home and be our neighbors. And they're our neighbors right now. So thank you for joining us. I can't wait to get into the questions and get into showing you all these amazing art pieces and all the talent that we are wasting. We're wasting human capital by warehousing these individuals, and enough is enough. And we stand here today to unpack all this with you and show you the talent that exists, and you know, creatively look at ways to dismantle the mass incarceration project that's attacked our communities and extracted billions of dollars of tax revenue away from us.
Thank you so much, Flacco and Juan, and for emphasizing why we're here and what we're hoping that this exhibit can elevate and remind us of, right? To bring everyone home. Yeah. So let's get started with our questions for our panel, for our curators. The exhibit talks a little bit about how incarcerated individuals are not provided with art supplies and the kinds of materials you would find in an art classroom. Could our curators talk about how some of these pieces are created and with what, right? So we're going to talk about the lowrider truck and the Santa Muerte piece.
So the lowrider truck is made with chip bags that are given to us in our lunches, bags that go around the bread, and homemade ink that's extracted out of magazines that are you know, mixed with a little bit of water and a little bit of soap, and that's what's created right there. And so there is no art supplies in there. And so this is, you know, these creations are put together as a way to survive and also as a way to heal. It's a way to pass time and heal. And it's also a way to connect with our loved ones on the outside, in our communities on the outside. So this truck right here was made out of chip bags and magazine ink and paper, and put together and made into an awesome lowrider truck. Has a hood on the front. It even has the T-top on top, so it can get some sun in there too. And the doors open up, and it has the back, so we could even stick some other little things in the back and cruise down the little art pathway. But yeah, Francisco Mendoza uses art not only to heal and pass the time and keep himself occupied, but also as a way to survive. You know, a lot of folks go to prison and they don't have families anymore. They've sat in there and their families are no longer there to provide for them. So they have to creatively think of ways to connect with other incarcerated individuals and their families and produce art pieces to get hygiene. Because the reality is the prison industrial complex doesn't give hygiene. They don't give deodorant. They don't give toothpaste. They don't give any of that. It's still having to be bought inside there. So this is a way to eat. You know, the top ramen soups is the biggest item on the incarcerated individual's diet because of the nasty, disgusting food that the prison industrial complex gives individuals who are incarcerated. Soy-based, nasty, just thrown together slop that we're forced to eat. So this truck right here was put together. It has a little bit of pencils, but all of this is contraband in prison. So when you're making this stuff, you have to kind of like secretly do it because it's contraband too. So if you're caught making these little pieces, they could call it out as contraband and they could, you know, give you a rules violation for this.
Thank you, Ariane. Thank you, Flacco. Excuse me. And then can someone tell us about the Santa Muerte pañuelo piece?
So the Santa Muerte piece was made from sheet. So sheets are, you know, something that they give us and that we have access to. And so what we do is we get paper clips off of court paperwork, and we make homemade sewing needles. And what you would do is you would get the paper clip and you would put it on the ground and you would just slide it back and forth. It takes a long time. So to make a sewing needle takes about 5 hours to get it flat enough so that it gets the hole on the top. And once that hole forms, then you can get the thread that's pulled out of your pants, that's pulled out of your shirts, that all this thread that exists in our stuff. You can actually do it even at home. If you need thread, you can pull a whole bunch of thread out of your boxers. And that's what we learned. And that's how we actually make line, fishing line, to communicate with each other, because we don't want to bother people, you know, by yelling and talking to each other on the tier. So what we do is make fishing line as well. Well, that line is now being used to thread this sheet together. And then what Luis does is he takes a pen or you know, sometimes there's no access to pen. So some of the ink that's used is extracted from items inside the cell, such as books. That book ink can be extracted out. Anything that has ink in it, that ink can be extracted out with water and with old indigenous traditional ways of extracting ink, right? And so what he does is, if he doesn't have access to pens, that's what he'll do. But here he had access to some pens, and he made a shader. And he sprays the ink on paper, and he takes a homemade shader out of paper and he lines it all up and he shades it. And so this is what was created afterwards on a sheet that's a incarcerated individual sheet. And this is, you know, a lot of detail. 209 was the cell that me and Luis were in as cellies. He did all my tattoo. So he actually is he's been incarcerated since, you know, a youngster, since about the age of 16 years old. And he's self-taught. All this is self-taught. He taught himself how to draw. He taught himself how to do tattoos. And so this piece right here has a lot of meaning behind it. There's a lot here. But 209, me and him were incarcerated in that cell together for a lot of years. And, you know, we shared a lot of our dreams and a lot of our visions and a lot of our hopes for the world and for our families. And so, yeah, this piece is a very, very beautiful piece that was all done with a lot of heart and a lot of love.
Thank you, Flacco. Yes, and is this the size of a bed sheet, or is
So
it?
no, it's not. It's actually like a cut piece out. Now it's very hard to get this stuff out of prison. So these sheets, like if they catch you sending it out, so it's trial and error. So what ends up happening is when a lot of these are stolen, so the correctional officers will just steal them. They'll be like contraband, and they keep them, and they have their own art exhibits in their homes or wherever. I don't know, you know, but so you trial and error, you send it out, and if it gets taken and I respond back and I'm like, hey, that one didn't land, he has to go in and make another one until he finds a day of the week that the guards are not going through all the mail and looking at it and stealing items that are trying to get out to the families. So this was a trial and error run. We to get a lot of this art out, it had to be snuck out too, you know. So this, you know, to have this in front of us today, it's really special because this piece right here, he went through about 2 to 3 pieces before he found out the day that it could come home, you know. And once he found that day, then we started doing them on a constant basis and getting them out. And, you know, we landed a few of them, but, you know, it's a lot of work and it's a lot of labor. But yeah, nah, that's a small piece of sheet, hand sewn with homemade thread and a homemade sewing needle. And
Wow.
And the shading on that it's very unique. The shader, any artist can use it, but it's just a paper shader, and it's like really tightly rolled together into a cone. And then he uses sprayed ink on paper and just splashes it in and just really does all that shading. The shading's beautiful.
Yeah, it is really beautiful. Thank you so much, Flacco. And Juan, you wanted to add something as well?
Yes, as my co-curator has been saying, you know, these individuals, they have to be really innovative in the process through this art pieces that they're doing. As mentioned above, you know, they're very limited on the resources. So having to be very innovative and be creative with the resources that they do have and the available things that they do have, to just the surrounding materials that they're able to get their hands on, it's very unique in itself, and it just an art form in itself. As you just, you know, not many of us can really put our time and really do something like that with a bag of chips or anything like that. So it's really impactful to just really pinpoint that how innovative these individuals have to be just to create a masterpiece like this. And you know, and most of these individuals, like he was saying, like it takes time to form this type of art form. And many of the individuals, once they do hone in on this type of skills, most of them will carry it and just guard it, and they make it their little hustle. You know, it takes time and skill. So, you know, they're like, hey, you know, can you make me this for my mom and pop? Like, I got you. You know, give me this and this and this, and you know, they make it a little hustle because you got to learn how to survive and bargain around this. So this is a type of currency that they use to inside the prison system to just get with their hands on snacks, food, whatever they need to get their hands on, even other materials. And this is, most of these individuals share like the culture through these art pieces, and it's a healing process for most of these individuals, as you can see through the sheet, where these individuals are able to point out their pain and their trauma that they've gone through and what they're going through and stuff like that. And this is an outlet for them. This is the way for them to use this as a therapy form to, and release that trauma that they've been holding on so long. And this is a way for them to release all of that. And it's through this form and art form that these individuals have honed in on. And I just want to really pinpoint on that.
Yeah, thank you so much, Juan. Yeah, I mean, the ingenuity, it's like beyond creativity. It's like the conditions are ripe for having to engineer the creation of it, the sharing of it, the timing of it. Like all of it is like a performance of survival and resiliency and beauty, right? Like the double dutch of like, which day do I get into? So thank you for illuminating the process of just making the work, because I think sometimes in the art worlds, there's a lot of kind of focus on, the artist statement and like why this is made, and then like what I like to think about art is that it's like 90% construction, and here it's like 90% ingenuity of like creating it and then sharing it is most of the there's a performance that happens, right? We're just like continuing to trying to share. Thank you both so much for that. And then the next question I had for folks, and maybe Gilberto can tell us about this as well. Can you tell us about your own personal experiences in relationship to art and education? So what was the therapeutic aspect of your own art forms? So maybe we can start with Gilberto since we haven't heard from him yet.
For the idea of art form, for me, it was very therapeutic in the sense of like, I went to juvenile hall, I went to county, and besides art, like I was kind of good at doing art when I was a youth. When I was a youth, I've been criminalized. That's when I started going to juvenile hall. But before going to juvenile hall, like I always draw. I always like learned to draw because my brother, he just sent me a lot of drawings from High Desert and Pelican Bay, and he used to send me rhymes too. He used to send me like rap letters too. So that's where I started rapping too, and I created it as an art form. But really, it was more like it was very like, as like Juan mentioned, like you see like every detail within the art, like you can see like how that energy manifests or how that energy is embedded within that art form. When you look at it, it's like, okay, like you can see the pain and the struggle within, like for an example, like in the background, like when you see the individual, the CDCR, and the head right there in the front of it, like there's a person right there, like you can see like all that and down in details, especially when the way how when they write rhymes. When I used to get rhymes, like it was so very like specific in the sense of like, but like he always referenced back to culture, and it goes back to culture because at the end of the day, he always want to reference to the culture, where it's like, you have resistance within this culture. So he always talk about like always fly high as a brown eagle over a pyramid when you look at the Turtle Island. And in the sense of like, don't ever let your soul become your limit, because you have potential. And the ones that are fearless are willing to accept the fear. They could fly higher. And in the sense that when he was writing me those letters, he was talking about like how being incarcerated inside the shoe, he had to use like different creativity of art, especially when intellectual art, he was very, very genuine inside with intellectual art, and how that even become a important way of like maintaining your humanity, maintaining your spirit, maintaining your physical form. And that kind of like, I took that with me when I've been started getting incarcerated to juvenile hall, when I got to county, and when I got to my last case of being charged for a homicide. That's when I just started writing so much rhymes. Like I actually wrote like 2 albums already when I was in there, like, but the thing was really for me, like art became a way for me to escape the world from the reality of the world and the uncertainty that anything might happen inside the carceral system, like race riots and all that. But the point was for me was like how I utilized those art and started looking at like an outside of like understanding my own self. Like, do I really want to continue in this? And I started understanding how there is a larger segregation within the carceral system or between like race and culture, and how why we cannot be friends, why we cannot correlate, or why we cannot share art, why we cannot talk about art in the sense of being collective, a resistance against a state apparatuses, which would be the prison, where people are actually criminalized to draw art that represents their culture. Like if you have Malcolm X or George Jackson, if you have anything with like Azteca or Che Guevara or Zapatista, you'll be labeled as a criminal gang offense or gang prisoner. And that for me, art has really become is a unique resistance culture against the dominant narrative of the prison system.
Thank you so much, Gilbert, for that. How about Juan or Flacco? It's been your experience of art making. How has it helped you?
Art. I know my art form is a little bit of poetry here and there. I do some writing, obviously through Professor V as well, through the one of the programs that I'm here at UCSB. But art, you know, I got into it through, as mentioned as well, through one of my colleagues of through Juvenile Hall in county and stuff like that, and different art. And I was a lost soul, and that was a way for me to just release some of the pain that I've been holding on for so long, and just the trauma that I've been holding on. So just through the lyrics and rhymes and just poems of whether it's towards my mother, my family, whoever it may be, it just that's the way for us, a way for me to just release that and just put it on paper. And we're very conservative, and we're very close knit, and we're very guarded, and we have this hard show, and we rarely let anybody else into our personal lives, and to just even express the way we're feeling or how we're feeling. And we're raised by society, and society's always like, you have to be this big macho man, and we're raised so that we have to not show any emotions, and in reality it's the complete opposite. And we hold that, but just that's the way we use this form, and we utilize this form to just as an outlet for that, and to show our emotions and show our vulnerability. And that's the way I got into it. And that kind of just led me to education, and somehow it all comes back in a circle, leading to education, not knowing where it's going to lead me. And somehow a couple of years later, I'm at UCSB, and next I'm right here curating an art exhibit, and somehow it's coming back around in a full circle. It's just an amazing in itself to just even think about the positions that we were in, and to the point that we were in, and behind bars at one point, to the point that we're behind this institution now. And it's an amazing in itself, like just to even imagine of where this has led us to, and just the pathways that are from it, and this pathway has led us to this pathway that we're in now. It has just been amazing in itself. And art form, and any art form in itself, whatever creative way you can be, just hone in on it, and just drive on it, and it leads to certain paths and doors that open up for you.
Yeah, no, that's powerful. And for myself, like in 2013, I took part in a mass hunger strike that was put together by all of us incarcerated individuals to combat the inhumane conditions that we were all experiencing. And so the indeterminate segregated housing units, but this came down from the Short Corridor Collective. Well, after we starved ourselves for 33 days in New Folsom State Prison, we came together and we got college courses. So we also started a creative writing workshop that Spoon Jackson, amazing poet, look him up, invited all of us to join this creative writing workshop. And I found that I was a poet, and I didn't know that. And Spoon Jackson had me come to his class, and he helped me learn to write spoken word pieces and poetry. And I was just like, wow, that's crazy. This is awesome. And so the poetry that I started writing in there, I started to unpack my experience, my life experience. So I'd like to just share a little bit of that poetry real quick, my snapshot of my 1989. I'm 6 years old, labeled ADHD, given a cocktail of drugs. Reagan's 80s tough on crime bill. This is your brain on drugs all over my television. The gang injunctions are dropped. This was the year I became addicted to drugs. Went to school strung out on Ritalin, pharmaceutical crack. This is my snapshot of 1989, the year my life was hijacked. my snapshot of 1996. I'm labeled a 13-year-old super predator, a product of Bill Clinton's Crime Control and Law Enforcement Act, locked away in youth authority, treated like Hannibal Lecter, strapped to a chair, smacked in the face, treated by retired military officers as a disgrace. They spit in my face, sprayed me with pepper spray mace. The judge kept asking why I was full of hate. I was a 13-year-old responding to the super predator treatment that the state enforcers gave. Now, all of a sudden, they made a mistake. The super predator's theory was all wrong. Vital years of my childhood life are all gone. So these were ways that we dissected what we were experiencing using creative writing and using poetry. And so, yeah, so it's important that we highlight that because, you know, there's a lot of us that went through a lot of the theoretical framework that was developed in these universities. Us kids, we were trapped by it, like the super predator theory that came out, and then all these crime control bills and all these different things. You know, it's a shame that we had to go through all that for them to say, hey, we were wrong for producing that, right? Just like what Biden said this year that, you know, mass incarceration, we made a big mistake when he got, you know, when he was coming in, like, you made a big mistake and all of us are mass incarcerated now, 2 million people across this country. So, yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Flacco. And then we only have a few minutes left in terms of the panel, but can someone just quickly tell us about this piece by Christopher Avidia?
So Christopher Avidia has really used art to showcase the, you know, inhumane conditions inside solitary confinement. He's been down over 40 years. Predominantly, most of those years were spent in the segregated housing units of Pelican Bay, you know, the notorious segregated housing units of Corcoran. So Christopher Avidia, a really special artist. He uses homemade color from magazines, a self-taught artist. Uses a lot of his art is the inside of the prison cell and also a lot of animal art. Like, so he really connects with us through animals and uses animals to connect with, you know, just humans and how much we're all connected, right? And also a great way to heal. Christopher Avidia actually wrote us a letter and he told me to open it up. So here goes the letter. He's in the county jail right now. And he's fighting for his freedom right now. He's been down over 40 years. And so here goes Christopher Avidia's words. He told me to open this up and read this to you all. It's really short too, so bear with me. So I've been incarcerated since 1980. And during the beginning of my time, I found myself bartering food items from the store for cards drawn by other inmates. I would trade whatever was requested. And as time went by, I found myself wanting to learn to draw myself, but didn't know how. One day, I asked one of the other inmates who drew, how long would it take for me to learn to draw as well as he did? He said that if I continued to practice every day, it would take about 5 years, give or take a year. I began by drawing with pencil whatever I could not knowing exactly what or how to draw. I didn't have a technique or style of drawing. I only knew that my desire to learn at the time was motivated by my wanting to draw something from me personally to my daughters and family. It was my form of expression to them, and the hours, days, and weeks spent on it was my gift. It wasn't until I found myself drawing 7 days a week for years did I realize that drawing for me had become a form of escapism. In 1984, I began drawing with ink pen. In 1989, I began focusing on my preference, which was drawing various types of animals and occasional abstracts. Drawing with ink pen was like learning to draw all over again because I needed to learn a technique that I was comfortable with. The styles of shading techniques I tried were crosshatch, stipple, and even small circles. In the end, I settled on crosshatch as my primary technique. I learned to draw by teaching myself to draw what I saw. through trial and error, I slowly began to burn through the tedious times of trying to draw it in detail as I seen it in my mind. I learning at times trying to draw it in detail, my discipline along the way. For some reason, I am rarely satisfied with the outcome or results because no matter how well I may have done, I always felt I could have done it much better. Leaving me with a desire to keep striving toward this picture I can't seem to duplicate in my mind's eye. I've been donating my artwork to various nonprofits over 20 years as my attempt to give back. Though my journey continues, I've come to the realization that no matter what I may draw, I am always my own worst critic. At this time, I am presently down here in the Los Angeles County Jail based on a 1437 resentencing petition that I filed back in February 2019. My next court date is scheduled for January 7, 2022, and hopefully have my OS order to show cause hearing sometime in March, but that remains to be seen. I will be 62 years of age come March. I hope this bit of insight and perspective conveys what I was hoping to share, which is one man's view. And that's from sincerely Christopher Avidia to all of us today. And he says, P.S. the county jail only allows us to use pencils to write with, which is why I've submitted this in pencil instead of ink pen. So yeah, that was to all of us today. So
thank you, Flacco. We only have about 2 minutes left for our last 3 questions, so we'll try to go through those. So Juan, you were going to ask me something next, and then I think we'll kind of combine the last couple.
Yes, but first, after talking to you and just getting to know you a bit and just narrating my story, and somehow we came to the talk, and you shared a little bit about your narrative to me, but I just wanted to personally ask you just the experience and just everything that you went through just personally, whether from connecting family and community and just connecting everything together. And I wanted to just personally ask you, a little bit about your experience and your cousin.
Yeah, so my cousin is Oscar, and he and I are both from Southeast Los Angeles. He is from Cudahy, and I'm from Bell Gardens. Our family still live in that region, and he's been all over California, from the New Folsom to Pelican Bay to Centinela, and now in San Luis Obispo, which is near Santa Barbara. So I'm always, I visited him there recently. And he's one of the most, wonderful scholars I know. And he and I talk all the time about theory and art and recovery. And so here you see in front of us a hummingbird that he drew with colored pencils. This is when he was at Pelican Bay. He was in the SHU for 13 years. So my cousin, the fact that he's at all healthy in any way is like a fucking miracle. I'll just say it like that, because it's such like a violent practice. This SHU is such a violent practice. And so he's really, had the support of my tia, his mother, and my mom, and other relatives to get him through. And so we're hoping that he'll come home next year. But he and I read books together all the time about Los Angeles, about A People's Guide to LA. I send him books on wiring. So he's working on his skill set for when he transitions out. And he's just like a wonderful person with whom I'm so glad that I have this like kind of language of the street, of academics, and of recovery in my family. But he had to go to prison to get that. And I think that that's so incredible, and also not the way it should be, right? But I'm really grateful for him and everything he teaches me. So I'm glad that I could share his artwork with you. And he's a Japanese American, Mexican American person. So my partner's Japanese American and Taiwanese, and Oscar is the only person who knows Taiwanese history in all of my circles other than my Taiwanese family. So his education in the system has been incredible because he's done it for himself. So I'm just glad to be here with all of you to reflect on that. Yeah. And I think we're out of time for our questions, but maybe there's a way I can combine these for us. So would love to hear from Gilbert about um, maybe his home knowledge of art. Like, what was your art education maybe at home? And I think we talked about that a little bit. And then Ryan will tell us, what the impact of this art might be into the future. So Gilbert or Juan, if you want to talk about your home knowledge as education, like what did your community teach you about art? And then what is the impact of the future?
Okay, so how I started with my art, I kind of actually started my art when I was tagging on the wall with a spray can. And that kind of like, well, actually, hold on, let me revert back. It wasn't really a spray can, it was a Sharpie, actually. It was a Sharpie. That's what I remember it. So, but yeah, like honestly started tagging, like I started getting into like a tagging crew when I was younger. But really it was more like the art. Like I was very like amazed with like wild styles, freestyles, especially with New York graffiti, and especially playing into like with like letter patches, and especially like with the Chicano art too. Like I like to cooperate with both of them, so I always have my own little style going on. Most people like, man, you from New York, you're a Chicano New Yorker, what? But like, I listen to a lot of hip hop, so I would listen to like Wu-Tang. My brother used to put me up a lot of on the West Coast rap song when I was little, but when he got to prison, he started listening to a lot of Mortal Technique, a lot of Wu-Tang, a lot of like like Mortal Technique, Wu-Tang, and Dead Prez. So he used to send me a lot of music. He said, "Hey, listen to this music right here. Like I'm sending you some music from prison. Well, not like just the lyrics, like the lyrics, you know." So he used to send me that, and I'm like, "Oh, you know what? Let me go on YouTube, look it up on the New York stuff." So I seen all of my New York graffiti. So I incorporated both of them. But honestly, though, like Flacco mentioned, like what homie said, like through the letter, like it becomes like an escapism. But at the same time, it helped me to reflect my own like when I'm doing art, like there's certain things like I'm very clear conscious, like it kind of like escape me from the reality, but actually it may give me time to think about myself. And through the whole time, like when I was doing art, I would literally ask myself, like, can I be great? Can I be greater than great at this very moment? And while getting letters from my brother, it actually kind of even pushed me further more when he started like understanding that when I started writing letters back of like written letters of rap, he told me like, how come we don't get into like English? Why you don't become like an English major or like get into like school, you know? But at that time, when I was going to school, the only purpose of school for me was only either make money, like in an illicit market, or either just go beat up some people that was rival neighborhoods. And those are the only two things I go to school for. But now, since my brother became a structural agency for me when he got out, got sent to Berkeley. He like, now we could start putting your rhyme skills into the classroom. Now we could talk about theory, talk about hegemony, put hegemony in a rhyme, like time, like those things. And he actually became like my support guy. And I was proud, like I'm happy because he, without him, I wouldn't have met Flacco or Juan, and there would have been no underground scholars in higher education. And it's always important that we're like how this art actually, this little small fine experience of art kind of like led me to here.
Awesome. Yeah, no, and the future of this, we're creating pathways. The underground scholars are creating pathways for folks out of prison to come into higher education. And so, when I look around at UCSB, there's no formerly incarcerated students. We're the most underrepresented population of students here at UCSB. And that's what we're trying to change. We're trying to change that narrative of where we come home to our communities and we serve life sentences in our communities. We're completely marginalized, locked out of getting careers, locked out of getting apartments, locked out of going to school. And so these are the pathways that we're trying to create for artists. And showing this creativity shows the creativity that is lacking in the solutions that could exist in our communities. It's time to center our energy on those closest to the problems, because those closest to the problems are closest to the solutions. And I'll keep it real with you. Like, we have, diversity, equity, and inclusion here. And we're trying to, talk this and that about, being a diverse campus. But, Just today, I got a letter from the grad school division here, and they denied us entry. All of us formerly incarcerated that applied here were denied here. And so we're trying to dismantle that. We're trying to create pathways to create upward mobility for formerly incarcerated individuals instead of what we currently have, which is the school to prison pipeline. Wherever there's a police agency attached to schools, there is a pipeline to the prison industrial complex. So we're trying to dismantle all that right there so that we can all experience upward mobility and so that we can all sustain our families and our lives and create positive outcomes so that we are not constantly being recidivated back to the prison industrial complex. And so that's the goal with this art. It's time to come together as a community, and you can't spell community without unity. And so we leave you on that note today, and it's a lot to take in, but you know, what are we really trying to do in higher education for our communities and for the next generation? Are we trying to incarcerate the next generation like the last generation did to this generation that's here now? Are we trying to dismantle that and create pathways so that we can get back to being one family again? Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone, for coming. Yes, I think this is our Q&A part. It's going to be a little bit short and sweet, but yes, if you have a question for the panel, I believe there was one earlier that I think got answered, but if other folks have questions, that would be great. Yeah, you can put them in the Q&A section or in the chat. Art really is healing in so many different ways, just for surviving different kinds of conditions, but also for creating possibility for our lives. I think, you know, Juan forgot to mention that he also has made a video about his experiences in these different systems, and is working on pieces for a memoir in the class that he and I are in. So the work continues, right? The art doesn't stop here.
Definitely. And Obi's Obi, Christopher Young was actually executed by, the Texas Department of Corrections. There's art pieces from them. They created a Credible Messengers writing program where they worked with youth from death row and used their narrative to impact these youth into higher education and help guide them down a different pathway so they didn't end up on death row like they were in that situation. And so there's so much work that's getting done by Credible Messengers. And it's just so imperative to highlight this work, because at the end of the day, we have 2.9 million people incarcerated in this country. Another 5 million are on probation and parole and in county jails and in detention centers, ICE centers. What are we really doing in this country? We celebrate freedom the most, but have the most people locked up. And so, if we don't come together as a community and say enough is enough, we give $15.7 billion to the Department of Corrections here in the state of California. What are we really doing? You drive down the street and all you see is people living in tents. Well, there's $15.7 billion in the Department of Corrections that houses 120,000 people out of 39 million people in the state of California. That's why we have people that are living in tents. That's why we're all entrenched in poverty. And we have to wrap our mind around that in order to really create righteous solutions to the pressing issues in our communities. Because this tough on crime idea is what got us to the place that we're all in today. And trust me, crime still exists today. So the tough on crime model and the punitive style didn't do nothing but drive us all deeper into poverty. And so now it's time to switch that and create upward mobility.
Yeah. And I mean, ultimately, if we're all we all work for or are attending a state institution. So, we're aware very clearly of funding priorities and that it's not in our educational systems, it's not in our healthcare systems, it's not in mental health, it's not in housing. And for those of us who belong to groups that are oppressed in multiple ways, including health especially, right? There's so many folks in our and who are incarcerated who have mental health issues, right? But the way that we deal with them in society is to not treat them or prevent them or take care of our loved ones, but to put them in jail. So yeah, we got to put a stop to that. So in our last couple of minutes, Alana, one of our fabulous library staff, is going to drop a link in the chat so that folks can see the artwork virtually. Yes, and yeah, so I think we have a comment in the chat. I'll try and read it just now. Any closing thoughts from Juan or Gilbert as we wrap up?
Yeah, I just wanted to touch up on one of the questions that was asked earlier about how these individuals use this art form to just deal with trauma. It was touched up on a little bit earlier, and I just want to just reiterate how the great Christopher Avidia just mentioned it himself in his words, quote unquote, of this is a way of escapism, and it starts from a very young age, like my co-curator Gilbert said, from a young age, tagging on a wall, tagging on a desk or anything like that. And this is a form for us to release and to fight back against these oppressions, and it's a form of resistance. We're dealing from the very young age with all these oppressions and systematic oppression that we've been dealing with. So we have no way, no outlet. We can't go there. We're forced to be in geographical areas, and we're forced to be called minority, and we're marginalized and discriminalized. So this is a way for us to kind of from little ones to just hanging on the walls as a way of a release, to just release our artistic form and artistic skills. And this is a way for us, even through the prison system, to release that trauma and that pain, and like you said, it's a way to escape those enclosed four walls and into a reality that you dream of, and you just want to get away. And it's a way to escape the whole basically deal where you're living in a situation of incarceration. So like you said, like the best Christopher Avidia said, it's a way to escape this trauma.
Yeah. Thank you so much for all your thoughts. I think we, someone shared their experience who's here, Chich Railosa, who said that art helped him heal to allow to escape in reality for a couple of hours a day. So thank you, Chich, for that. And we do have an important question. Gail asked, how can the community support the underground scholars at UCSB? That's a really good question. Think about it for a second. Do you have a fundraiser?
So
events coming up.
We have the graduation celebration coming up. We do everything on a bare minimum budget. The state doesn't have any type of funding stream towards this program. So anything helps, we're trying to create aftercare, not aftercare, but just after programs for our graduates, careers, job placement opportunities that, create sustainable incomes for us to take care of our families. And also on top of that, abolition. We need to abolish and we need to quit depending on the same foundation to build off of. We need to break the whole entire foundation on, and we need to rebuild the foundation and then rebuild the house instead of just completely putting new windows and remodeling the house. So we definitely need to really all come together as a community, and we need to rethink what justice looks like, because at this point in time, all we're doing is dehumanizing our neighbors throwing them in, they're being warehoused, and all of our tax revenues being extracted into private personal accounts under the pretense of serving and protecting us all, which isn't happening. So we're just re-traumatizing people and then bringing them back out here and telling them good luck. And that's just not the right way to get things done. So let's come together as a community, a Santa Barbara community, and let's start to create upward mobility and pathways into higher education, into sustainable income and employment and business ownerships, and just all the different resources that individuals need in order to survive, straight up.
Thank you. Yes. And then, so the last thing I'll say is thank you, Gilbert, for dropping the USI link tree, which is exactly where you should go if you're thinking of wanting to support Underground Scholars. And looks like there's all kinds of opportunities to support. So please go to that link, save it, share it with your community members and relatives to support this important work at the ground level, the family level, and the school level. Thank you everyone for coming today, and I hope you get to see the exhibit and support the Underground Scholars. And may all of you be safe. May all your relatives be safe and healthy and happy. Thank you everyone for coming. See you soon.
Take care, y'all.